Hello, this is Radar Radio, hosted by myself, Catherine Jackson, along with Ash Cook.
Hi there.
And Joe James.
Hello.
In this week's podcast, we're joined by Matt Benton of HoldTight, who are a music publicist working in the industry. Hi, Matt.
Hello. How's it going?
Yeah, all good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Can't complain, apart from the obvious, but trying not to. Just taking 1 week at a time, and thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
No problem at all. First thing that we wanted to establish is obviously what you do now, but if you could briefly describe your role within HoldTight and what they actually do within the industry, and then maybe explain how you became interested in that as a subject.
Yeah, sure. So at HoldTight, I can never remember what my official title is because let's face it, titles, especially in the music industry, don't really mean much. But I work in print and online media as a music publicist. HoldTight recently rebranded from our older name of HoldTight PR. We are formerly a music PR company, but we're now more generally what we like to call a 360 music marketing agency. So we do PR, we do digital marketing, we do consultancy, but basically any way to try and help make your band or your event more widely known to the general music listening public. Working in print and online basically means that I take the band or album or event and talk to the contacts I have that work at various music magazines or websites, try and get them interested and try and have them on board as kind of allies in the campaign. So HoldTight generally, we work across multiple fields. We have a radio plugger, we have print specialists, online specialists, and a digital marketer. But just anyway, really to kind of spread the word. And I guess my interest in that all started when I studied music at uni, and I was leaving uni, and I was kind of thinking, well, what do I want to do? And I knew that at the end of the day, I really wanted to work with the music that I loved, music that I would kind of get back to my room at the end of the day, and I would listen to, and I would really want to talk to anyone else about. And then that kind of led to the light bulb moment of, well, PR is effectively that job. You try and find like-minded music fans who just also happen to be professional media people who are also first and foremost fans of music. You try and find like-minded music fans. You talk to them about something that you're obsessed with and trying to get them on board. And it was a very straightforward transition from uni to working in the industry, which I was quite lucky with. And I got wind of Basic Records advertising for an internship in assisting in their social media. And at the time, Basic and HoldTight shared an office. And after my internship at Basic, I internship at HoldTight, and then they never managed to get rid of me. And now here I am, some long years later. So it's a very, very long-winded way of answering your question, but that is roughly who I am and how I got here.
So is it fair to say that you quite enjoy what you do?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, working in music doesn't really pay a huge amount. I mean, I have friends who left uni and went into banking. That's always the easiest example, and they're making tons of cash. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be doing this job if I didn't love it. If it didn't really, in the nicest possible way, if it didn't feel like I was working a hobby. It is the sort of job where most days, I wake up and I'm excited to do what I do, and the excitement of taking on a new artist that you've been waiting for so long to try and have a crack at, or when you're working with an artist that you've worked with for years and they finally start getting the attention you think they deserve, it is it's very satisfying. And like I said, at the end of the day, I'm a music fan talking to music fans, and it's really nice to kind of have that sense of bonding and camaraderie. So yes, definitely enjoy the day job.
And have you studied much in terms of music or PR? Did you kind of just I guess, fall into that?
Yeah, I fell into the PR aspect. I studied music at uni, but it was a lot more. Well, it was taught as an academic subject, so it was a lot more, words and scores and analysis and all that sort of stuff. And I do generally hold by the mantra that I ultimately I didn't need to have gone to uni to do what I do. But it definitely helped me. It taught me how to learn as much as anything else, rather than anything specific about music, or at least the music that I work with day to day. My knowledge of the music scene as it is, and the music that I work with is because I am a fan, and like all fans, everyone gets a bit obsessive about the things that they enjoy most. So I guess aspects of formal and also informal education.
And I mean, does it go back further than that? What do you play, and where did your interest in music start?
So I've played. I started learning piano when I was very young. I think about 5. So I've been playing piano for best part of 20 odd years now. And that's always been my number one instrument. In terms of discovering the music that I really enjoy and work with, which generally speaking is the heavy side of guitar led music, with kind of progressive aspects, and some world music thrown in, I guess. That came in 2 waves. So like most people, there was I guess family involvement. So I remember my older brother, he got into sort of the more mainstream nu metal wave that kind of came in the very early 2000s. So I, as a quite a young kid, I remember listening to things like Alien Ant Farm, POD, Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, Rammstein's Mutter album, all that sort of stuff. So that was, I was just about old enough to think, oh, this sounds kind of cool, but nothing more than that. And then about 2005, 2006, I tell the story quite a lot because it's quite nice that there is such a specific moment. But I was up visiting a friend up in Scotland, and we went over to another mate's house. So it was a friend of a friend, and he stuck on a couple of tracks from I think it was Ghost Reveries. It was definitely an Opeth album. And I remember thinking, oh well, this is awesome. I mean, it's like nothing I've ever really heard before. And when I got back home a few days later, I went onto iTunes and I just selected some random Opeth tracks from Blackwater Park. And when I say random, I mean completely. I picked the tracks on the basis of me liking their name and the fact that they were the longest tracks, so it was better value for money at 79p a track or whatever it was at the time. So that's the proper Yorkshireman in me coming out. But and then I just that was it. That was the kind of, in terms of personal interest, really going and finding stuff myself. That was the genesis moment. So very quickly from Opeth, I discovered Between the Buried and Me, Protest the Hero, Porcupine Tree, who are still my number one band, I think. All that. There's a kind of a general sound there, I think. We're talking the progressive side of metal, like just prog rock in the case of some Porcupine Tree albums. And then that was it. I just started kind of collecting and listening and learning about the kind of the links between albums and bands, and now here we are. So I'm sort of 14, 15 years on.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I was a big nu metal kid, and then at uni my mate Nick played me Cult of Luna, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, they are. I've only seen them, I think 2 or 3 times, and it's only ever been at festivals. But each time, 3 times actually. At each time they have been responsible for some of my favourite festival sets. The first time I went to Arctangent, which was 2015, and they actually missed their flight. They were due if I remember this right, they were due to be main support, I think, on main stage, but because they missed their flights, they missed that slot, so they ended up doing like effectively second stage headline after the actual second stage headliner, and that was incredible. Then I saw them at Roadburn. Then they played Mariner Full with Julie Christmas, and it was mind blowing. And they are such a good band, especially I think in a festival setting. And then the most recent time was Arctangent last year, which is still, as a, only speaking as a fan rather than, with my work hat on, it was one of my favorite days of music because, this might not be the exact running order, but seeing bands like Car Bomb and then Cult of Luna and then Meshuggah, it just, it was a mind-expandingly good day. So, oh yeah, great band with them.
Yeah, me and Ash were at Tangent last year. It's actually pretty funny because we only managed to meet up with each other once because the phone signal's so bad. And I kind of imagined us going around the opposite sides of the festival all weekend trying to find each other. But yeah, I was actually backstage on the Cult of Luna set, and I was sort of watching them chat to someone I'm not going to name drop, but and I was like, why am I watching it here? And then ran out front, get the full light show, and because they're just, I always describe them as shock and awe.
Yeah, it's like being stuck in the middle of a storm, but like a storm in slow motion. That's what they're just a very kind of like wild and windswept band, but with just such a good sense of control. I don't know, whenever I experience them, it always feels like quite an elemental, quite a natural experience, I think. Maybe that's just the kind of the Scandinavians in them coming out, but yeah, really good band.
Has working at HoldTight enabled you to have any more of those amazing music days?
Oh yeah, I mean, first and foremost, on the basic level, I don't think I would be at or experiencing festivals like Arctangent full stop, or definitely not in the same way. And then yeah, certainly some of the best moments of working music are when you've worked with a band for quite a while and you have that connection, and you really feel like it's a band that deep within yourself you really want to do, that you want them to do well, not just because you believe in the sound, but because they've become mates of yours, and their success feels like your success, and also you just feel proud, not of yourself but of them. You feel like a proud band dad, and there've been some really nice moments for that, that bands that you might work with for a good year or two, and you never have the opportunity to see them live more than say once, and then you finally get that chance again. It's always really nice to reconnect, especially when it's a band that, say for example, they're based in the States, so you don't really get the chance to see them in the UK. A recent favourite, and there'll be a band playing at the next Radar, was watching Conjurer's headline run, which was October last year, which doesn't feel like last year, it feels like last millennium. It was it was a really nice moment because I've worked with the band now for about 3 years, and this was the headline run that was effectively the end of their Maya album campaign cycle, and working that album up was just it was a delight from start to finish, and seeing them go from strength to strength and seeing them like grow in that way was was very it was nice to see, and it had that gave me that sense of pride that I was talking about. But I wasn't able to see them at the London show, so I travelled up to Leeds to watch them, just partly just to see them play anywhere else. And it's because I'm based in London, the vast majority of all music I see will be in London. But it was really nice actually going to somewhere that wasn't London, just a different part of the country, and seeing the reception there, and to see a band, play to a sellout audience, at a venue that I don't think I've ever actually been to before, and just kind of experiencing that level of energy and just at the end of the day, it's just joy, really. It was just really lovely to see. So yeah, working at HoldTight gives you, has given me plenty more opportunities to kind of, how do I put this into words? I guess it's that sense of, by doing the job that I do, when it goes really well, and without sounding too, I don't know, egotistical, like when it goes well, you feel like an extension of the band. You feel like another band member. So, you're proud of their success, and you feel like you've been a part of that in the best way. So you have that euphoria of a really, really good live show. So
part of the team.
Part of the team, yes, and thinking of this conversation and the present company, it's not something that I would just extend to bands. It applies to events as well. So seeing how Radar went down last year, especially considering it was the first time, there was a very similar feeling there. It's that kind of, it's the realization that, as cliched as it sounds, like music is more important than just being a collection of nice sounds or heavy sounds or whatever. It is, and this is something we can all appreciate this year. It is something that brings people together, and it is something that a lot of people really do live for, and it is can be their main source of joy and passion and all those kind of nice, positive, powerful words. But it's a good thing. When it all comes together, it can be a really great thing.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, for complete transparency, HoldTight are our PR agency for Radar, and you've been working very closely with us on the event from the beginning. And in fact, James Monteith of HoldTight is one of the first people that I even spoke to about the event, in terms of it being an idea that we had that we were looking into. So you have always been part of a team, and you were standing there, I think, at peak panic, at peak joy, and all the emotions in between. You were certainly the first person that noticed that we had booked Dirty Loops that was outside of our immediate team, because you were standing next to us when I turned around and just went, "Oh my God." Yeah. So looked up from my phone and was like, "Here is that email confirmation." And it was as we were watching the unveiling of the Secret Band, which theatrically was quite a moment, and the only time that the three of us, as in Joe, Ash and myself, were actually together that day. So it was very much serendipitous that it all sort of happened at once. And yes, you were very much and always have been part of our team, so that makes perfect sense that you feel like that with the bands and the events as well. So in terms of that, I mean, that's something that I understand from my own venue as well, that there are certain bands that have gone through, in terms of your boss, for example, seeing Tesseract starting off at I can't remember when, early 2000 and sort of 7-8 gigs, and then seeing where they've got to now. It's immensely satisfying to see that rise. So who are the bands that you have sort of had the privilege of spotting through HoldTight and seeing rise up, and who are the ones that you think you're beginning to see that journey start and unfold now?
A band that we no longer work with, but we did PR for 2 albums, I believe. This is another, I think, a really nice story in terms of just realizing how small the world can be. When I was leaving uni, I spent a bit of time, as a lot of people do, trying their hand at the journalism side of things. So I was, writing album reviews for a couple of sites, and I came across the debut EP by Black Crown Initiate, Song of the Crippled Bull, it was called, and it was really getting a lot of underground buzz. And I think it was one of only 2 EPs I gave like a full 5 out of 5 review to, and it's a brilliant piece of work, I think. And as soon as I was in a position to, and realised that they didn't have PR, I reached out to the band, and we talked for a bit, and then just as happens quite quite often. The conversation it didn't at the time. It just didn't quite match up, and that was fine. And then they signed to E1, I believe it was, over in the States. And I thought, great, they're starting to get noticed. This is really good, and that was them on their way. And then, as it happened, about 18 months down the line, we started working with the label, which meant that after all that time, we actually managed to get to work with the band. And then when they finally came over to the UK and actually to meet them for the first time, it was a very nice moment to realise that this is, like I say, quite a small world occurrence. But they're a band that it was nice to have a hand in their kind of like their relatively early start, and now they're kind of relatively established in their name that's kind of out there and touring and growing all the time. And I think they have some sort of they certainly have the talent, they have the difference in style and the potential to go on to bigger things. I've already talked about Conjurer, and I could go on about them for a long time, but to save boring everyone else, Conjurer as well. But a band who are still at the very beginning of their journey, but I think have really ultimately limitless potential. And I have so much time for these guys. Are completely on the other side of the musical spectrum. They're a piano-led pop-ish, but it's more just kind of like light progressive piano pop. They're called Exploring Birdsong. They're from Liverpool, they all met at Liverpool. And they are it's quite an interesting setup. So the vocalist Lindsay, she also plays keyboards. The bassist Johnny, he plays bass and second keyboards, sometimes at the same time, which is it's amazing to see if you ever get the chance. He's just too talented. And then the drummer Matt, and I started working with them at the very, very beginning. I think they just put out one song before, and they've still only released one EP, but starting to look ahead to the second EP. And what they've done off the back of that one EP has already been it's been very nice to see. So really nice attention from the media. A couple of award nominations from Prog magazine, for example, and they've played with Sleep Token, and just to be able to see them, especially see them live and just hear her voice. She has one of the best voices I've ever heard. It's the sort of thing I could just listen to over and over again. So I really think that they're a band that is still very, very much at the beginning of their journey, but they're ones that I've especially got an eye on, and could be something that I think could go in the right direction if they have the right amount of luck and take the right opportunities, like with any band really. But that's a couple of examples. But I mean, on a question like that, I really could go on all day, but I'm aware that we don't unfortunately have all day.
I'm not entirely sure how long you've been, I guess, in the industry for, but what do you think has changed in terms of the world of PR in the last 10 years or so? And if obviously that's before you've been involved on a professional level, when you're at a hobby level, have you noticed that difference?
Great question. I think ignoring the obvious, so pretending that 2020 hasn't happened, the biggest changes. Everyone talks about the fact that print media is dying a slow death. On the one hand, it is partly true insofar as I think off the top of my head, Kerrang in about 2003, 2004, they were shifting. It was something like close to 100,000 mags a week, and it's nowhere near that size now. So it holds some truth for in terms of purely just in terms of numbers and in terms of mainstream appeal, you might say. But then I disagree, because we're also seeing the continued success or diversifying of more niche and more specialist titles. sites like sites and magazines like Metal Hammer are continuing to to survive and thrive, especially in spite of this year, because they have they have multiple ways to get to their readership and their consumer base. So the conversations about print media, that is something that is always changing. We're always having to try and stay ahead of the curve. And then with that leads me to my second thing, is that the nature of PR is constantly changing. It's not how it was even 10, 15 years ago. To an extent, every person who works within a certain area in music is a PR person. If you're a manager, you'll do a bit of PRing, even though it's not necessarily called that. If you are, if you're an agent, you might even do a bit. If you're a label manager, you will. And to flip that on its head, being a PR means now you don't just do PR. So I spend quite a lot of time effectively what is, artist management or A&R. So I spend quite a lot of my time especially with the artists I work most closely with. Two that I've talked about, Exploring Birdsong and Conjure, I think are very good examples. I spend a lot of my time, it's not just talking about, oh, well, how are we going to best release your next record? It's things like, okay, well, how are we going to take the direction of your next video, or how are you going to look, or I'll put you in touch with this person, or and so it's effectively, artist management or soft consultancy, and that is changing all the time because of the way the industry is going. I think more people will have to do fewer people will have to do more jobs, so everyone will have to become a bit more well-rounded. And then there are slightly more specific examples, which I guess tie into both those points. Things like, I don't know, music premieres, for example. 10, 15 years ago, a music premiere used to be something that was a really big event in terms of for the artist that you work with and the site that you have connected them with, because sites, by and large, for an event like that, because it had a bit more exclusivity and a bit more kind of pulling power, it was something that stood out a bit more. These days, a premiere on a site, it's good for like press kudos and attention, but ultimately it doesn't really necessarily garner you any more views. So you have to be a bit more clever and look in a bit of look a bit further afield if you want to just guarantee that your video gets a certain amount of views, or if you want to maintain good relations with any site but without being able to offer them premieres. So the field of PR and the nature of PR is constantly changing, but you just gotta I guess, like with anything, just be aware of these changes and be proactive in dealing with them rather than reacting to anything, because sometimes a reaction might be too late and you don't want to get behind any curve.
And well, thanks for that. But I was going to say, out of interest, how do some of those bands make the most out of working with you guys?
I guess to answer on like a slightly more abstract level, the bands that get the most out of it are the ones that I think are most open-minded and give us the most amount of time. So the ones that we are able to bounce a lot of ideas off and try and explore lots of different things. So, for example, with our digital marketing at HoldTight, that can be a lot more broad in scope than PR, in terms of we can market something on a number of different social media channels, and we can digitally market any piece of content that an artist has, whereas generally speaking PR tends to be album or tour or single, which is generally part of an album campaign. So to get the most out of it, there is that kind of more abstract answer, and then more specifically, I think my number one rule over the last, ever since doing PR, has effectively been to know your place, really. And it sounds like, it doesn't really mean much in of itself, but I guess what I mean by that is having a sense of perspective. So not reacting like a total dick to a bad review, or being able to understand that actually no, you're not going to get a premiere on your new single because premieres don't really exist anymore, or to be able to understand like, okay, well no, what you have done is it is pretty good, but in order to make it even better, we need to do X, Y, Z. So it's that sense of, I guess it's it's the same as the first point in terms of working with any band successfully, or for any band to work with a PR successfully, you do have to, and this goes back to my very first point, is like you all become members of the same team. So you all have to start treating each other on the same level, and kind of everyone needs to be involved in everyone else's ideas, and you all have a really good sense of dialogue. And and not just treating one aspect of any band campaign, whether it be PR or touring or I don't know, or anything. You can't treat any one aspect as an afterthought. Everything has to be coalesced within kind of a bigger picture.
So, sort of dialing down on what you were just saying. So, just let's say someone's listening right now who's in a newish band. They're confident in their music. They've done the basics right. They've got photos. They're starting to put it out there. How would they smartly go about working with someone like you to get off the ground?
This can be a cold answer, but ultimately, at the very, very early days, it depends on their budget and their cash flow. For me, I'm a great believer in and proponent of the digital marketing we're doing at HoldTight, insofar as that can be, I think, the best early doors value for money if you are a band that you're just starting out and you don't have a huge amount of cash flow. So that can be things like, okay, well, we can make sure that we market your video in such a way that the advertising that we we put behind it we'll try and make sure that it can be seen by X number of thousands of people. So that I think would be my sort of the first answer, is making sure that you have you're clever with your money and your time. Time is something that I think a lot of bands who are just starting out and haven't really been kind of fully blooded by the industry, something that they're not really aware of, is we need a lot of time to work any release, but B, like, it is a very valuable asset to be able to have a good couple of months to go and pitch an EP or an album or a single to the right people, and just start to kind of build up these little bits of connections, and just be able to make sure that when the band is able to do anything more significant, maybe it's moving from releasing their first EP to releasing their first LP, that we already know there's a certain number of supporters who are ready and waiting for the album. So yeah, those are kind of I would say my first two answers.
In terms of the digital marketing side and the time frame, I mean, I guess as an agency, if it's fair to call you an agency more than or a partner, you'll probably I guess trying to challenge you a little bit here. Sometimes it is difficult to promise something could be seen by X amount of people, because obviously there is the issue of you can place an ad in front of someone but they might not click.
Yeah, totally.
So I mean, when you're given content from bands, earlier on, do you ever help shape how that's put out?
Yeah, so that goes back to what I was saying in terms of being a PR is not just about being a PR, and it's also in terms of artist management. Yes, we do. If we are in a situation where we have bands who are receptive to be able to give us the time that we would need. So yeah, if we have a band come to us with a video, for example, and it's just not quite right, or they have a great sound and they come to us but no video yet, and we can advise on that. That is what happens in a perfect world, and also rarely. The more brutal and realistic answer is, like, more often than not, there isn't the time, or there isn't hugely like the willing for that to happen, because bands tend to come to us with finished products, especially when they're newer bands and they're coming to us for the first time. It's a lot more the case of, we've done this thing, can you help us with it? And the quality control is whether or not we are in a position to take them on. We will never work anything that we don't think we can give our best to. And yeah, you're entirely right. Especially in PR and digital marketing, you can never promise anything. We don't ever promise. It's something that I think I'm quite proud of at HoldTight, because I am aware of there being other companies who are, I think, more blasé about, absolutely trying to gift the moon, and then you at the end of the day deliver nothing, so it becomes a waste of everyone's time and money. We're careful to never promise anything, because we know with all the goodwill in the world, we can put a lot of work into something, and sometimes, because we're music fans talking to other music fans, the other music fans just might not take to it, because music at the end of the day is something that is very subjective. But what we will do, and what we do is we are always very careful to say, this is what we think we can achieve, and this is what we will try to do, and with our experience and our best confidence, this is what I think we can get. But yeah, you're right. You can never promise anything, and if it were that simple, then everyone would be doing it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so actually, I'm also in a band that's currently on a hiatus at the minute, and
Yes.
We were clients of yourselves, but it was through a label. So we actually never had, I guess, that like the feedback, or I guess consultation process, because it was it was what the label effectively saw fit and what they wanted to push, and that aspect. But we did. We were so pleased with the results, in national publications, and a lot of positive reviews and spreads on what we were doing as a band, which obviously some people would argue ripped off Tesseract, and other people would argue that we were kind of occupying a space in between Tesseract and Periphery. And it was really interesting to see the positivity coming, digitally and print-wise, from the publications, and then obviously from yourselves as well, as we're being fed that back. But yeah, I guess it not having, being on that side of the coin for a band, and then seeing the difference with a festival has been interesting, because although sometimes the work, I can imagine, is the same in terms of what you're pitching, like the idea you're trying to sell, is there much of a difference between, say, how you've pitched Valis and how you've pitched Radar to publications and to reviewers and things like that?
Yes, the main difference obviously is Radar is much more, it is a literal event. So especially in the first year, the aim was to primarily get people to attend, to be able to see, this is a festival in its very early days, but there are the makings of, in terms of thinking like over a 5-year timescale, there are the makings of something that could grow into an event that's much bigger, but also has a very strong, will continue to grow into this very strong identity as, one of the progressive festivals in the UK. So there's that sense of, you're trying to involve people more in more of a kind of like well-rounded 3D sense. So it's not just like, oh look, we got bands playing. It's, get a sense of the space, get a sense of, the audience that's coming to the festival, and try just enjoy it. Even just on a level like, okay, well that's where you can go and hang out between the bands that you want to see. That's where you can go and eat. Everything that makes a festival good or bad, above and beyond just seeing bands you want to see. So there's that aspect. In other ways, no, they are quite similar. Especially with with a band or an album campaign, it can be quite often you will talk about the band in different ways to different people. And it's the same with the festival, and because you have quite a broad lineup, and because Radar is especially, I think, and also this is definitely one of its strengths, it's especially eclectic. You're able to pitch different aspects of the bands to different people. So, or at least you're able to pitch different bands to different people. So you can go to the likes of Kerrang and say, oh look, well last year they had Royal Tomasi. This year they've got they've got Conjurer, for example. You can go to Prog and you can say, look, they've got Haken, they've got Dirty Loops, and similar with a band, you can reference different aspects of any band's sound and say, oh look, they sound like Tesseract, but they also sound like XYZ. So there are some similarities and there are some differences. Because we live in a much more like digital virtual age, for the vast majority of people that we will send an album to, when we're working with a band, they might not ever see that band live. So it becomes a much more of a distanced listening process. You're basically treating the record as if it was like an artifact in its own right, rather than if it happened to be an extension of an experience. Whereas a festival is the other way around. Really, you're ultimately you're not just talking about bands in a more abstract sense. It's like, no, we come and experience this thing, and be a part of it as it grows over the next years.
You kind of answered it a tiny bit there right at the end, but I was about to ask. I mean, one of the things that we found really difficult is marketing a festival with no photos or videos from the year before, and I would actually probably go as far to never wanting to do that ever again, because you've got a whole year to pitch and sell this concept and get your ideas across without evidence. So how did you approach that, and did you find it a bit of a challenge in that respect?
Yes, it is a challenge. Visuals, I mean, whether you're working with bands and on album campaigns or festivals, visuals are really important because, always more than any amount of text, they are what catches the eye. With something like that, in terms of my contact with people and my dialogue with the contacts I have and trying to get them on board, I always find that honesty and transparency is the most straightforward thing. And you just say to them like, well, look, this is the first year. This is the inaugural event. There is all we can do is try and sell you the idea, but what we can what I can promise to you is the fact that they've got this lineup. That is that's black and white. That is a solid lineup. That is for a festival's first appearance or its first kind of iteration of its own self. It was a very strong sense of identity, and it was very clear lineup in terms of the festival knowing what it wanted to be or the space that it wanted to inhabit. So that was generally how I went about it. It wasn't necessarily relying on or in this case not being able to rely on pre-existing visuals to be able to demonstrate what it might look like. It was more the idea of, look, if you take this small leap of faith with us on the basis of in fact it's a strong lineup, and as a result of the strong lineup, this is roughly where it's trying to position itself. If you have that faith, then you will also have the faith that actually, in terms of what the experience will be and what the visuals will then be for next year, it will become a strong event and something to return to.
Yes, just in terms of some of the campaigns that you've dealt with, would you be able to tell us about some of the ones that stand out? And as a friend of the company, why does your answer also involve dildos?
The dildo campaign. So this was a band. I was actually still an intern at this point, so it was very eye-opening for me. But HoldTight, back when we were HoldTight PR, worked with a band from Birmingham, I believe, called Morgue Orgy. That is, an orgy in a morgue. Very, very good, very tongue-in-cheek. Well, death metal. If the name doesn't give it away. And we designed a promotional product to send to magazines to get their attention. So on the back was a promo CD, but it was effectively it was a terrifying looking dildo that we repackaged and called believe it or not, called it the Cadaver Impaler. So it was a dildo specifically designed for horror acts that you might find in an orgy in a morgue. So there was that. Some people, we are, like, people talk about it still to this day, and that was a good few years ago. So the sort of thing that was it's very funny to look back on, and was quite horrifying, but also very fun at the time. And I think a good way to kind of slightly think outside the box and do things to get noticed. In terms of campaigns that stand out in recent memory, let's see. We worked the early EPs by Sleep Token. That was very good fun, because that they are a band or an artist or an event, whatever you want to call them. That very quickly got a lot of attention and were a very interesting proposition in order to try and even just describe, because they had this whole, at the time, had this whole big mythology thing going on. And it was the sense that gigs are not just gigs, they are events. And we were working with them right up until just after the point of their first gig, which was at St Pancras Old Church. And there was a lot of effort that went into making that event very special and very atmospheric. And it was their first. Actually, no, I don't think it was their first gig, but it was their first headline show. So there was a lot of kind of extra bits and pieces to make it a bit more unusual. So there were leaflets handed out to make it feel like it was a religious event, and there were sermons and stuff going on, and just the fact it was at that venue was a bit different. And just in a slightly more bland level, like just trying to manage the guest list and making sure all the people we really wanted to be there to see it and to kind of get in at the ground floor of this band, who are already pretty big and growing at a very quick rate. So yeah, those are two that spring to mind. But in their own way, the vast majority of campaigns that we work, they all have these little fun little aspects, and being able to do slightly different things. Like, I don't know, I really like things like asking a band to do an interesting cover, for example. That's something I always. It's a very easy way to be able to do something. It's a little bit fun and just kind of might connect you with some people that would otherwise not necessarily you'd be able to break through to. And that's the sort of thing that is a bit more of a regular occurrence than dildos. I'm glad to say. But yeah, it's been a good few years, and I think it kind of says something that basically my first memory with HoldTight was just sticking loads of upside down crucifixes on on big black plastic cocks.
Well, moving on from cocks.
Yes. Shall we?
You actually reminded me when you were talking about managing the guest list that my biggest rule for Radar this year is that I am not allowed to give out a photo pass, and it all goes through you, because I gave away a lot last year and we had quite a busy photo pit, which I hold my hands up. That was totally my fault. So anyone that asks me now, I just like, Matt, hold tight. Matt, hold tight.
Yeah, we can handle that.
Yeah. Sensible question. So someone wants to follow in your footsteps. Maybe they're not at uni, or they're about to go to uni, coming out of uni. What advice would you give them?
It's very cliche, but it's a cliche because it is true. This aspect of the industry, if you want to get into it, first and foremost, and mostly, it is a case of knowing people. It, I think, very much helps that I got my first internships partly because I was, on Twitter, and I was visible on Twitter, and I was already communicating with, the people at Basic and at HoldTight. So they already kind of knew who I was or where I was, coming from musically, and just, in terms of sense of personality and ethic and all that sort of stuff. So that is probably going to be my most simple answer of this chat is, just identify these networks of people knowing each other and just start to get in there. And because so many job opportunities are word of mouth and not really strongly advertised in a traditional sense, that is, knowing people will be the first way in which you hear about these opportunities, and that will be your first foot in the door, I think.
And finally, one of the things that we've been asking everybody is A, how you've coped with lockdown, and B, what you've been listening to throughout it and what you recommend that you've discovered.
How have I coped? I'm trying not to focus on too many things at once. I think that's the most profound answer. I mean, it's basically, I just, you're taking a week at a time. You're trying not to worry about too many things and have too much of a existential doom and gloom, which can be easier said than done. But the week at a time approach, I think for me helps me break that down. And with that, also a little bit of a sense of structure. It can be very easy when you're working from home and when, all you're doing is thinking about not being able to do 99% of the things that you could last year. It's very easy for time just to become this kind of like meaningless mess and, of nothingness. So to be able to have some sort of structure to the week, like, I don't know, it's a Friday, so do something a little bit different, whether or not that just means, I don't know, Friday can be takeaway night or something really boring and like, just suburban like that. That's how I've coped. And then obviously also music helps, really helps. What have I been listening to? Oof. I always find this question difficult because of my day job. Like, the vast majority of what I listen to is also what I work. But on a bigger level, I really enjoyed the new Trivium record. I think it's their best since Shogun, I think, which is a bold statement because Shogun is one of my favorite records, I think, ever. I also really enjoyed the new Enter Shikari, their last. So that one and the one before it, The Spark, I think are their two strongest. I really like sort of the more mature, softer, well-rounded Shikari. And then new discoveries. Ooh, this is always an interesting one. I think it came out last month, but the new Vile Creature release I thought was excellent. And it is a cheating answer because they are one of ours, but because it's their debut full length, it kind of counts as discovery because they're still new. The new the Foxjaw LP, Royal Swan, is one that I personally would have been listening to as a fan, even though I am very biased in my answer, and I have my work hat on, but that is one I've been constantly playing and replaying, even though I don't have to as much as I have. So yeah, there's a mix there from kind of like top to bottom.
And how do you think the music industry is going to look in the next 6 months? Or do you want to go with a safe answer? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, who does know? Well, I don't want to end the conversation on a downer. But I think we will not be seeing significant live music events until there is some sort of vaccine or some sort of way of regulating bigger crowds than we can. Which means in 6 months, I think 6 months is too small a window to be able to really kind of hope for that. But yeah, I mean, the easiest answer is no one knows. It's a new disease and an entirely like unprecedented situation that we're living in, as everyone likes to say, and also like the last time that we had such a, especially in kind of quote unquote the West, such a big biological event like this. The concept of a music festival, 100 years ago in 1919 was just like, music festival? What does that mean? So, we're dealing with new events in a situation that is either very new or so old it is new, because 100 years ago was a completely different world. So, yeah, don't know, but we'll just cross fingers, toes, arms, and legs, and hope for the best. Roll on 2021.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the mental attitude I'm trying to foster, that hopefully I am worried about December, January this year. Will there be a big second spike? Will that then impact the industry in the summer next year? Because obviously that's what we're thinking about. As you said, don't want to end it on a downer, but I miss gigs, man.
Yeah, yeah. It makes me really appreciate and realize that gigs were, again, I mean, like I said earlier, like so much more than just about the music. They are first and foremost social events, and any good gig, you have that sense of collective, a collective experience and collective joy. And it has been a long time since any of us have experienced that. So yeah, I miss gigs too, and what I wouldn't give to be able to go and see a headlining band at 10:30 on a Thursday evening at Black Heart. But yeah, hopefully soon.
Yeah. My dad messaged me just before we start recording this podcast, and he's in Belgium at the moment, and he said, "Oh, do you want to come over and see me?" And I thought the idea of just even leaving the country at the moment. I mean, I actually don't want to go to pubs or restaurants because I'm taking it quite seriously. But and then that kind of makes me think, if there was a gig tomorrow, would I go? And the answer is no. I don't think I would.
Yeah, this is one of the challenging things this year has been is you end up becoming quite fearful of other people, I think, because there is so much of a worry that you might get it, and you get it because other people pass it to you. So you have to kind of put a lot of trust in people. It's a bit like being a learner driver. You have to have faith that other people on the road are effectively better drivers than you. And yeah, if a gig was offered to me, tomorrow, I don't know if we have been given enough evidence or have been given enough of the right messaging by this, failure of a government for any sort of crowds to be able to, act in an appropriate way. So, yeah, I've not done any restaurants yet. I've done 2 pubs, and I've been, very pleasantly surprised at how strict they have been and how measured and distanced everything was. But yeah, I've just cancelled a holiday I had booked in Crete, and it wasn't the idea of being there, because I think being in Crete is actually safer than here right now. It was the idea of getting there and just like I said, you're taking 1 week at a time and just hunkering down a little bit and focusing on things that make each week, go a little better, like good music.
Yeah, I mean, we try not to go too political in this podcast, but my feeling is, it's great that now everyone has to wear a mask in a shop, but why couldn't they have said that at the start, and we probably still wouldn't have X amount of cases per day, and we'd be a little bit closer to maybe having events in the summer. But, these are not decisions we make. We have to sit here and listen to their decisions and try and work out how we can put on a festival, and, other people, how they can do gigs, which is exhausting, I have to say. We're very lucky, and we said that in the crowdfunder that we launched the other day, that we're with the Association of Independent Festivals, so every day we get about 3 emails of current government advice, how it affects the industry, etc. Catherine and I are in the Music Venues Alliance, so we're constantly getting all the stuff from Mark David and his team, who have just been amazing for the live music sector. But yeah, it's in a time when everyone wants to be an expert, the experts are quite quiet, unfortunately.
Yeah, quiet, and like I said, because this is a very new situation, the advice sometimes, in good faith changes, and sometimes through trying to, rewrite their own history in bad faith. But the advice changes all the time, so it can be hard to keep up. I guess, we just gotta keep being sensible and hashtag stay alert and just fingers crossed for this time next year. But we shall see.
Let's put up a sign somewhere that says X days without a gig, and we can just add one every day.
Yeah. Let's hope it gets to that those numbers hits a big fat 0 at some point.
Yes, I think that's a more positive point to end on. So
yes, we got there eventually.
We will get back to all of this live music at some point, and may we look forward to the time where I'm panicking at you either in email, text, or person, and worrying about the smaller things in life as opposed to the bigger things in life again. So thank you very much for coming on and talking to us. It was really interesting to hear what you had to say. So thanks for all of that and all of your help in a professional capacity as well. It's always appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a great way to spend an hour.
No problem. Well, I mean, technically we should ask you to be promoting it. So there you are. There's a job done for yourself.
Well, there we go.
So
easy peasy.
Thank you, Matt. So that's goodbye from myself, Catherine, and Ash.
Goodbye. Cheers, Matt.
Anytime. Goodbye, guys.
And Joe.
Yeah, cheers, Matt.
Great. Awesome.
Cool. That was really good.